talk about, we at the Amistad Catholic Worker House and our friends are here to talk about what happened to our friend Rico Jones when he checked in to the Grand Avenue shelter on Thursday night. There's been some coverage on the internet as well as in the New Haven Independent, and Mr. Jones is going to tell the story for himself, but we're here on his behalf and in support of him to hear about what happened to him at Grand Avenue. Thank you.
Good morning. Grand Avenue, Thursday. I was asked to remove myself after paying rent. Asked to remove myself from taking photographs with no people in it. They're afraid of the idea that if you go ahead and people get to see exactly what kind of filth is in the building, that it would do them some harm. My direction is not to do them harm. My direction is to make sure that the shelter gets clean, not just for me, but for others that have breathing problems inside the shelters, and also other things that are other health problems. The deplorable situations is that there's soap scum on bathroom walls that haven't been cleaned off in years, okay, which I know is removable. There's mold in areas where it's not black mold, which is not breathable. There's also insulation up in an area where I know by code it's not supposed to be uncovered. The thing is, it's not the idea of trying to shut the shelter down, it's just trying to have it cleaned up, okay? I mean, my unfortunate accident of being kicked out is their retaliation if I took a picture, okay? But it's not fair that other people have to sit back and live in those deplorable atmospheres. The bed blankets are not washed very often at all on the beds. They're also sit back and they tell us like, oh, we washed, we did this, we did that. Sure, when we come in, it smells pretty decent because they sit back and they have enough cleaner in their product. But they're not clean for the simple fact that you can see rust, mildew, and mold on any picture that I have taken. Like I said, it's not just about me. It's the idea that other people do have to have somewhere else to live. The 90-day program is short. If I go ahead and if I have a 90-day program and I get a job, 2 weeks left of my job, 2 weeks of my 90 days, and I get my first paycheck on the day I get kicked out, where am I to go? How are you supposed to sit back and live if you only have that 90 days? Thank you.
Thank you. May I speak a little bit? I wanted to say something a little bit for the Spanish people that don't understand English. I want to speak a little bit Spanish. To all these people, para toda esa gente que nos está escuchando y que puede ver, apóyennos a nosotros para que nosotros podemos colaborar nosotros y estar juntos together. Estar juntos para que vean que la unión hace la fuerza. Y a mi amigo Mark, and Miss Lucy and his daughters and brother, nosotros estamos siempre juntos, pero quiero que aprendan un poquito de español, lo que entiendan lo que nosotros estamos hablando, que vamos a luchar por juntos y muchas gracias a ti. Thank you very much to you. You know, I appreciate that. I want to speak a little bit Spanish so that way they know what is speaking together. It's the only language we can speak. Heart.
Thank you.
Corazón.
Thank you. And there, besides Rico and Leo, there are other folks sitting here that have had the experience of homelessness and have stories very similar to that of Rico to tell regarding arbitrary treatment and the denial of rights. Rico, let's remember, was sent to the streets on Thursday night around 7 p.m. With nowhere to go. And I want to put this in the context of our overall campaign at the Amistad Catholic Worker, which is where then shall we go? There is still not a place a legal place for a person, a homeless person without a shelter bed to be. In other words, there is no place in this city where one could not be moved on or arrested for taking up residence or taking refuge. We've been trying for months now to get to change that policy, to change that situation. City Hall still has the question before them on these steps: where then shall we go? And we still don't have an answer. Until we do, this campaign of homeless, low-income, and housed people will continue, because housing is a human right. The right to take refuge together is something that needs to be protected. There were people that accused us of provocative action when we went from the shelter. 4 of us went from the shelter with Rico to the mayor's house on Thursday evening to ask, where then shall Rico go? And Rico, luckily, he has a circle of people around him that were able to give him refuge that night and subsequent nights. But every night is an emergency. We need to understand that. Every night is an emergency. And finally, it needs to be said, it needs to be brought to the light that in the aftermath of Rico being evicted from the shelter for taking photos of the conditions there, we did receive a call from the head of LCI, Eric Johnson, the next day, and he indicated that if we exposed the conditions of the Grand Avenue shelter, that he would have it closed and send another 75 people to the street. That's the response that we're getting so far from City Hall, and we still have the question, where then shall we go?
So thank you again for everyone for coming, and thank you to my comrades Rico and Abby and Leo and Mark for already speaking very eloquently to this situation. As we've already said, we're here today for approximate injustice, which is Rico's eviction from the shelter. That's the immediate injustice. But that is part of a longer injustice, which is the city's refusal to offer an answer to the question, where then shall we go? Until the other night, their best answer was a scummy, moldy shelter at Grand Avenue that didn't even have nearly enough beds for all of the people there. And we heard Amistad Catholic Worker, we are committed to standing together and taking nonviolent direct action to defend our community. And the one more thing I'll have to say is that our nonviolent direct action is going to continue. On July 24th, as all of you know, in May, we took over a city-owned property at 211 Rosette Street, and we used it for hospitality, for food, for community, and as a place for people to take refuge together. If there still is no answer to the question, where then shall we go, on July 24th, we will take over another property, because if the city is not going to defend people's rights, we will do it ourselves, because we are a community of care and of hospitality, and we stand for each other. And we're here today to invite the city into that process and to make that action unnecessary. And we've consistently listed several demands that will make that action unnecessary. Immediately, the city can legalize sleeping outside on public property. It is within the mayor's power to instruct the police not to hassle homeless people who are sleeping in parks or on public property. In the very short term, it is possible to restore all of the shelter beds that we have lost since January. We have lost hundreds of shelter beds since January, and we are potentially about to lose 75 more if Eric Johnson continues with his threat to close Grand Avenue shelter in order to keep the city's unsanitary practices under wraps. And third, in the long term, we are going to need a rigorous public housing policy in this city. You need to zone for it, you need to fund it. That's how you answer the question, where then shall we go? And if the city can work together with us, can join with this community of care, our actions will become unnecessary. But until then, we are committed to standing together, and on July 24th, we are committed to taking direct action. So now I'm going to hand it over to everybody else. You can do one-on-one interviews or ask any questions to the group that you'd like. And thank you very much for coming.
Have aldermen been involved with this? Have they responded?
There have been 2 aldermen who have been involved in this quite significantly. Richard Spears has stood up for Rico quite significantly and has made calls on our behalf. Aaron Greenberg, who is the alderman for the ward that the Grand Avenue Shelters Inn actually came down that night and asked for Rico's bed to be restored. That was something good that he did. Something less positive was the next day he actually backed Derek Johnson up in making the threat that the shelter would be closed if we continued to make noise about the conditions inside. So Alderman Greenberg has done some good things and some bad things, and we're very glad for the actions of Richard Spears, who stood in solidarity with Rico and with all of us.
That they figured this situation out with cleaning up the shelter before the weather turned in the winter?
Well, the weather's getting ready to turn in 2 days. It's supposed to be thunderstorms. Just imagine somebody running around here trying to keep dry, and then places that they can't, that they try to go, they get kicked out of because it's illegal for them to be there. Like in the bus stop at late night, not allowed to be there. In the daytime, sitting on a park bench because you're tired. After 20 minutes, they ask you to move because they think you're loitering, especially when you have all your stuff with you. Most homeless, a lot of the homeless people don't have a place to put their things, and they put their things outside, hide them in bushes or stuff like that, which automatically gives some kind of bugs. But I don't think all the itching and scratching in the shelter is due to bugs. I think it's due to that insulation. It's so wide open because they have an air conditioner that blows directly on it.
There's an important statistic that it's actually important to bear in mind because the city talks about winter housing being a priority. According to Columbus House and a number of their caseworkers, there are more 911 calls during the summer for homeless people who suffer heat stroke than there are during the winter due to frostbite.
Also, in terms of the 100 Days program, we've always applauded that initiative. And by the way, as far as I know, the 100 Days is up on July 31st coming, which may render our effort to take over another city property only needing to be effective for a week, if it's July 24th. Secondly, we can have all of the 100-day programs that we want, but if there's not specific laws against the removal of low-income housing, and if there's not an actual plan for the development of more low-income units in this city, we're going to continue to have homeless people with nowhere to go. I mean, that's a simple fact. And you know, again, I personally know many of the people who are involved in the 100 Days program. It's a worthy effort. But you know, it's like the old story of the babies being thrown in the river and they keep floating down the river, and until you stop throwing the babies in the river, we haven't solved the problem. So it's homelessness is it's an emergency problem which we're dealing with on a daily basis at the Amistad Catholic Worker. It's a crisis tonight for people who are in the streets and people who don't get into the shelters. It's a problem next week, next month, and as long as the policies in the city are not changed, it's a problem for the rest of our lives. And that's what we need to focus on, a comprehensive solution to homelessness.
Well, what happened with Rico is obviously wrong. When somebody is trying to do something to help improve conditions, not only for himself, but for, everybody homeless, they absolutely should not be thrown out and, treated like a troublemaker.
Do you have experience yourself with being homeless?
Yes, I've been homeless in the past, and I am currently homeless. I've been homeless this time for a couple weeks. I'm currently waiting for beds in several drug rehab programs. Substance abuse and addiction has been a problem for me, since I was a teenager, and it is the primary reason that I end up where I end up, and I accept responsibility for putting myself in these places. That being said, I think everybody deserves a chance.
Now, the Catholic Worker people have talked about taking over some city property and putting some shelters there since there's not enough for homeless. What do you think about that, or do you have other ideas for tactics?
Well, I realize that money is tight for everybody. So I'm not expecting the city and the taxpayers to build condominiums or apartment buildings for everybody to live in. I think that there's a very reasonable and cheap alternative. Could have maybe take some land and convert it into a free campground area for homeless people, and they can bring their own tents. So just somewhere where people can live safely and not be harassed by the police or anybody. So that would be, I think, a very cheap way to solve the issue, and to also do something with empty property that is otherwise just going to get piled up with garbage and